hormone replacement therapy is one of the hottest topics on social media these days. I think everyone's probably noticed that. Maybe behind peptides, that might be number one, but hormones might be ahead of chemtrails and the moonwalk. There are a lot of doctors and influencers online talking about hormones and all the changes with perimenopause and menopause. And all that information is great, really great to know that it's out there, but they're missing some very important things. And it just so happens to be the things that we specialize in as a wellness chiropractic office. So it bugs me to hear only incomplete information. So basically, it's the lifestyle piece, everything that's within your control to do naturally to optimize function of the glands that are producing your hormones. And the social media influencers, they never talk about supporting the actual signaling system of the way your brain talks to the organs and glands. The ovaries, the adrenals, the thyroid, and the pituitary, which of course, these are things that we can support with the supplementation that we give here. No one is
And
talking,
Claire,
I'm
why do you
sorry.
think that is? Why do they not talk about those things? Why do you think?
Well, because a lot of these people are medical doctors and they don't use herbs or glandular extracts or food concentrates in their practices. They only use prescriptions.
Yeah, they don't have anything to sell with that. That's exactly what I was trying to. Yeah,
Right. So
that's
that so
exactly.
they don't really educate on that piece. But the main point of why I wanted to discuss this today is to tell you about all of these conservative things that we can do that are non-hormonal that will help your body react better to the hormones if you decide to bring them in one day. Okay?
Even if they're in there, right? That's just kind of
Mhm.
helping facilitate the communication and how they all work. So yeah.
Right. Nobody online is really discussing the health of your cell membranes or whether your hormone receptors are clear and able to pick up the hormones in your bloodstream. They're just talking about, well, what are your lab values?
Mm.
And no one is talking about monitoring what happens with your body and how to tell what it's actually doing with those hormones once you add them in. Like if your liver detox pathways are not working properly, and then you add in exogenous hormones that basically are an additional burden to your body, it's something that has to be neutralized and detoxified. If you already weren't working well, you don't want to add more fuel to the fire. So it's true that estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone decline with age, and they do cause a major cascade of symptoms. I've detailed a lot of that on two blogs that are on our website. One is called Navigating Perimenopause and Menopause with Ease, and that one went out in our newsletter yesterday. And then another one is called The Beauty of Estrogen, where as I was learning about these hormones, I just felt like I had to organize it in my brain and put it down on paper just to get it all straight because these things are so influential and so important to our bodies. But simply replacing those hormones to normal levels, whatever you think normal is, it may not be what you really need if you haven't done the extra work. So what I mean is that the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone really should be like the finishing piece, kind of like the frosting on a cake or the cherry on top after you've already built a good foundational cake, if that makes sense. So what needs to happen first is that we balance out the endocrine system and clear the liver. We live in a truly toxic soup of chemicals. So detoxification is a continual process, like every day, not just in January when we do our group cleanse or later in the year. It's like your choices that you make every single day are going into it. Your lifestyle and diet have to be good without a lot of alcohol and sugar. And this work, these lifestyle changes need to start early in perimenopause, maybe even before you have any kinds of symptoms. And taking this approach can help you minimize any prescriptions that you eventually may need, and it can help them work better with less risk of new symptoms whenever you decide to add them in. So, four things are universal at this stage of life. Everyone deals with stress, and that taxes our adrenals. Everyone wants to maintain a healthy weight, and that depends a lot on how our thyroid hormones work and how our liver works. Everyone wants to have good focus and attention, so we have to prioritize our sleep, and the things we do to maintain good energy. And everyone seems to want better control over sugar and cravings, which is really hard living in America with all the sweets and convenient foods that are everywhere. But these things put a strain on our pancreas and they dysregulate our hormonal system and they create a lot of inflammation. And of course, that's going to impact our hormones. So nobody really learns about the endocrine system in high school health class. And you won't find this information in like tabloid magazines or Reader's Digest or, whatever you're reading. You're not even going to find it in a traditional doctor's office. So I can tell you, like when I first started going through this phase, or actually really kind of my entire life, because I always have had hormone problems since I was 13, um, there was never a medical doctor who kind of took me by the hand and said, "Hey, I think this is what's going on. I think we need to do this kind of testing, or I think you need to do this that's healthier for your body so you can get things balanced." It wasn't like that at all. So I had to learn this information for myself with Dr. Bob's help. When we started learning nutrition together about 16 years ago, my whole world started changing. We learned together about testing and balancing and doing all of this natural stuff. And, we wound up creating a lot of change in my body naturally using herbs and supplements. And eventually, when I got to the point where I needed a little help from my medical doctor, I compiled all the testing that I could and I presented my case to her and said, "This is what I want to do." And she basically said, "Okay." So that's how we managed to fix what was going on with me. And that's why it's become my mission to get this information out to people who need it. All right. So in 2018, there was this study that came out. It was a survey of over 8,700 people. They measured waist circumference, blood pressure, fasting glucose, hemoglobin A1C, and the levels in your cholesterol called triglycerides and HDL. And they did this from looking at people who were not taking medications for cholesterol or blood sugar. And I imagine that was pretty hard to find 8,700 people in a community who were not taking these medications, right? Because everybody has issues with these. They found that only 12% of Americans actually are metabolically healthy. And so that's the headline that we've heard for a while. You hear this from time to time, depending, what you're listening to. You don't hear a lot of information about what our society actually should be doing about it. But the healthiest people they found in their survey tended to be female because we tend to go to the doctor more often and maybe we're a little more in tune with our health or wanting to do something about it. Younger people, well, that just makes sense. Highly educated people, people who are never smokers, and people who work out vigorously, and those with a low body mass index. So basically, the way that we look, whether we're thin and fit and muscular, does have a lot to do with our metabolic health and our hormonal health. All right, so why does this matter? It's because our metabolic health and our hormones are tightly linked. Hormones are the control system for our metabolism, and your metabolic state feeds back to regulate those hormones. It's a two-way street. So this is such a pet peeve of mine because I'm in a few different Facebook groups where, women are talking about their hormones and they're talking about, well, what are you taking? What's the delivery method? What's the dosage? What did your doctor give you? And they're, basically complaining about not feeling their best. These are not working for me, stuff like that. And so every now and then I'll make a little comment like, what are you doing for your adrenals? Or what are you doing for your liver? And 9 times out of 10, they haven't even heard of the concept. And they're like, what do you mean? Not like I want to be typing all day on social media, but I've just noticed like nobody's really talking about this stuff. So that's a sign that the influencers on social media and these people's medical doctors or their telehealth doctors are still pretty much failing them. Hormones regulate how you produce, store, and use energy. And then your metabolic status alters your hormone production and signaling between the glands. So if you're basically not doing the work, like not eating a healthy diet, not working out, not honoring your sleep, not managing your stress, you're not going to have good energy. You're not going to be as lean as you want to, and the hormones that you're adding in maybe are not going to change everything that you're looking for. All right, so what hormones specifically are we talking about? Because there are actually somewhere between 50 to 100 hormones in the body. We're not going to go over that many, but I do want to cover 8. So I'll try to make it quick. Number 1 is insulin. This is our central metabolic hormone. When insulin stays high for long periods of time, multiple things happen. The ovaries increase their androgen production, that's DHEA and testosterone, which can be bad for all the girls who have PCOS. The liver drops its sex hormone binding globulin production, which frees up more hormones into circulation. And if you already have an imbalance, that possibly could be making it worse. So when your insulin is high, the brain becomes a little more foggy and less clear on its controls on appetite and how you feel satisfied. And the insulin itself is a fat storage hormone, so that leads to more weight gain. On top of that, when you have these major ups and downs of eating something sugary and then having a crash, this triggers more cortisol and adrenaline coming from the adrenals. And over time, it will fatigue that hormonal system. Unstable glucose also disrupts your melatonin production that comes from the pineal gland, and that can disturb your sleep quality. So either difficulty in resting and falling asleep or causing a dip in cortisol that then causes a glucose spike in the middle of the night. So oftentimes that's the problem with the 3 o'clock in the morning wake ups. All right, hormone number 2 is cortisol. We all know this one as our fight or flight hormone. Cortisol is totally necessary to give you energy and keep you standing up and giving you normal blood pressure and being productive all morning. But when you're under the influence of chronic stress, either physical, chemical, or emotional stress, that is going to increase your glucose so that it can feed energy to your muscles. And then your insulin naturally has to come up in order to bring the glucose down. So this happens whether or not you're eating donuts and sugar and stuff like that. And this is kind of why CEOs of companies will often go pre-diabetic, even though they're not eating. They're just sipping on coffee all day, they're skipping lunch, but they're stressed out to the max. So you want your cortisol to follow a good circadian rhythm where it naturally comes up high in the early morning to wake you up. And then it should stay reasonably high through the morning so that you can have energy and productive and get your workout done. And then it should gradually taper off without crashing through the day, and then naturally come down low at night so you can relax and have a good night's sleep. Look. But if you have problems with your stress management and your cortisol is high all the time, then you're going to have problems with your sex hormones too. So I'm going to show you that right here. So pregnenolone is the mother hormone that is the first one that's made from your cholesterol. So if you look at this chart over here on the right, you see cholesterol up at the top. That is the substrate that all of your sex hormones are made from. And the first one is called pregnenolone. So from there, you look to the left and there's your progesterone. And then it goes through all these other different steps. And then here we see cortisol and cortisone over here in blue on the left. And then over on the right, if you look through all the green stuff, there's your DHEA, your testosterone. And then if you go down further, here are your 3 different kinds of estrogens in purple down at the bottom. But you see that the cortisol doesn't really connect to the estrogen, like looking at all these little arrows and paths. I know it looks kind of confusing, but I want you to get the point that one side of your endocrine system feeds cortisol, and then the other side, going down through the green hormones and down to the purple, those are your rest and digest sex hormones. Okay, so a couple different ways to explain pregnenolone and how it's used in the body. One is this term called the pregnenolone steal, where some of this hormone goes to cortisol and the rest goes to estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So if you're constantly under stress and your cortisol is always very high, you're not going to have much left for your sex hormones. The other way to explain it is that chronic stress impacts the hypothalamus, the little gland in your brain that's responsible for perceiving if you're in a safe place, and if everything's balanced internally. And so if your hypothalamus gets this feeling you're not safe, it downregulates the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, and that tells your pituitary to downregulate FSH and LH. So if those two hormones are lessened, then that lowers the signal to your ovaries to produce their hormones, the estrogen and the testosterone. So either which way, the result is having low hormones and deficiency symptoms.
Yeah, I want to make a quick comment, Claire, and about that slide though. If they want to find that, where'd you find that so that they can look at that picture maybe in the future?
Yeah,
Um,
so this picture, it came from the Dutch test. And
yeah,
so anyone who has their Dutch report, there's one page, I think it's like page 8 or 9 in the booklet, and it's mostly just a blank page, but it does have a hyperlink in it. And if you hit control and click the link, then it takes you to this page on their website.
yeah. Or you can look that up on Google. I mean, I would look up pregnenolone and cholesterol and hormones and how all that breaks down. You can easily get this slide or get this picture from anywhere. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
if anybody had a question about that or wanted to see that, that's how you'd get that. So,
Yeah. Okay. So I know
okay,
this
glad.
is all like a little bit technical, but I'm going to try and go a little more quickly because I don't want to run out of time.
Okay.
Okay, so next let's look at hormones 4 and 5, your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4. So your metabolism is controlled at the cellular level. That means that your hormones have to get into the cells in order for you to feel them. Your thyroid, which is in your neck, produces T4 if it has enough iodine, L-tyrosine, and magnesium. And then your liver and gut lining convert the T4 into T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. As long as you have enough zinc, selenium, and other nutritional cofactors, and you don't have a ton of stress and inflammation, this process should work. But sometimes it doesn't. If your metabolism is impaired, the conversion from T4 to T3 doesn't happen well. And that's a problem because there are tons of people who are taking levothyroxine, and that changes the way your TSH works. And if your medical doctor is only looking at TSH and sometimes your T4 and neglecting to look at your T3 or reverse T3, they're really not getting a handle on what your cells are feeling. So there are, I would say, probably 90% of the people who are on T4 only still probably feel kind of terrible, kind of sluggish, maybe can't lose that last 5 pounds or whatever, because their cells don't feel T4. It's not an active hormone. So if you've determined that your thyroid hormones are low, I want you to think about, well, what could have made that happen? What are you doing with your diet and lifestyle to interfere? Maybe it's gluten, maybe it's fluoride, maybe it's chemicals like what's in your perfume that you're putting on your neck all the time. Maybe it's because you don't think organic is worth it and you're eating food that's contaminated with glyphosate, or possibly you're just not getting enough iodine in your diet, or maybe not enough zinc and selenium. So these are things that we go over in our nutrition consults. And the other thing to remember is that, okay, so this funny looking butterfly shaped picture on the left, that represents your thyroid. And over on the right, the orange and yellow picture, this looks like your kidneys with little yellow adrenal glands that look like little hats on top. These two glands work together. So when you want to get your thyroid healthier, you also have to support the adrenals together. Being stressed exhausts your adrenals and it drags your thyroid function down too. Okay. So next, real quick, let's take a look at your cellular health. Your cells are made up of essential fatty acids, and we can list those out like the EPA, DHA that you take in fish oil, or the ALA, which is in nuts and seeds, and then the arachidonic acid as well, which is in a lot of the other omega-6 oils. But 50% of your cell membrane is actually phosphatidylcholine. And that's why I've really enjoyed introducing this product to people in the office over the last few months. And then on the surface of your membranes are hormone receptors, and those act like little satellite dishes that are always looking out for their hormones to be coming by. So you maintain healthy cell membranes and healthy hormone receptors by keeping chemicals out of the system that sometimes can block those receptors, and also making sure to avoid trans fats and other harmful inflammatory oils, like what they're cooking with in restaurants, that can get incorporated into your cell membranes. So let's say if you've been eating too much canola oil and margarine and you've got these trans fats in your cell membranes, the membranes become more rigid. And so glucose can't get into the cell. And that means that the mitochondria can't use that to make energy. And then the cell also can't get rid of its metabolic waste. And so this whole energy system that can help you feel good falls apart if you've got bad fats and chemical toxins taking up space in your membranes. All right, so I hope all that makes sense. So now let's get on to the real sex hormones that you're probably here for. Um, Number 6, estrogen. So this is our primary female hormone, but men have it too, and it's absolutely necessary for good male function. For women, it goes wonky, where we get major highs and lows in perimenopause, and then it's basically just settles into a low value in menopause. Estrogen performs many functions in the body. One, it helps to keep our insulin receptors working well. It also provides a growth stimulus to muscles and bones. It helps to keep our skin nice and soft, and helps to keep our joints feeling loose and flexible. It also helps to maintain good ligament and tendon function, where you can go for a run without pulling something every time. And it helps to protect the inner lining of our arteries, which is called the endothelial lining. And so it helps to prevent high blood pressure because it helps to keep those arteries and capillaries very elastic. It helps to maintain good cognitive function, and it even promotes our serotonin production in the gut, which is what keeps us feeling peaceful and happy, and also leads to good melatonin so we can get a good night's sleep. So perimenopause, which is basically like pretty much the whole time during our 40s, that can be a time when you notice changes in all these different areas. And because maybe you're still having a regular menstrual cycle, you may not think that this is what's happening. It can be a little different for everyone. Progesterone. So this is the little sister hormone to estrogen, and it's usually the first one to drop because you must be ovulating in order to get a good, robust, solid production of it. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes testosterone is the first hormone to tank. It's not the same for everybody, and that's why we like to test. So progesterone is important because it keeps the proliferative effects of estrogen in check. It keeps your uterine lining from getting too thick, and it also matures the uterine cells so that they slough off easily with a nice normal period that doesn't have too much cramps and pain. Progesterone is very calming. It enhances the way GABA works in the brain. And so it can be very helpful to prevent anxiety and promote sleep and prevent migraines. And another thing to realize, it also keeps the mucous membranes in the eyes and in the mouth hydrated. So there are a lot of women who have not done LASIK, but do suffer from dry eyes. And when I meet them, I like to remind them that that could be a progesterone symptom. All right, so testosterone. Um, Testosterone eventually drops for everyone, but it's a much more gradual decline. It's not like falling off a cliff in the way that progesterone or estrogen can sometimes feel. So everybody has heard of testosterone as like this masculine male hormone, but it's absolutely necessary for women too, because it helps to build and support our muscle mass, which is our number one priority. When we get towards the end of perimenopause, I mean, our muscle mass is just going to be diminishing like faster than ever. And no one really prepares us for this information. But this is where our workouts have to change. We have to start doing a lot more resistance exercise and weightlifting as opposed to endless cardio, um, because it's that strain of the muscle on the bones that's going to be the new stimulus to maintain our bone density. And that is what's going to keep us out of the nursing home and independent and not frail. So testosterone is important because it does help with endurance. It helps to keep us lean and have our muscles popping out. And it also helps our mood. So testosterone helps to have a sense of ambition and drive and libido and to be motivated and to want to be engaged with people, making plans, doing things socially. Without testosterone, it's much easier to kind of fall into a slump, to not really care, to not feel like yourself. And testosterone, just so you know, is very protective of all of our cellular functions, even the things that I mentioned that apply to estrogen. Testosterone is protective against inflammation and joint pain and muscle aches, very much in the same way that masculine men protect women. So testosterone is very protective of us.
Yeah, and I want to, and all those symptoms that you just said, it very lead to something like depression and all that stuff that people are trying to treat when yet really it's probably an upstream endocrine problem that they could be addressing without suppressing it even more by taking medications. So I just want to bring that up too with the what we've seen in our practice.
Yeah. Well, of course, the struggle, with testosterone is that some people go to these clinics and where they're just handing out pellets to everybody. And what happens with that is you wind up getting a huge dose of testosterone right at the front end. And they say it's a controlled release, but it really diminishes by the time the pellet dissolves, and you have no control over it. So if you get overdosed in the beginning, it potentially can downregulate your receptors and then really make you feel, you can feel overdosed, and then you can also feel underdosed even when you have very high circulating levels of testosterone. So I'm definitely not a fan of the pellet option. Okay, so now that we know what all these different hormones can do, what is within our control to optimize our normal hormonal function? So I brainstormed a little list here. We can manage our stress by better time management, spending time in nature, doing yoga or other exercise, and then, of course, prayer and meditation. We want to ensure strong adrenal and thyroid function throughout perimenopause so that we have an easier time in menopause. And we want to support the health of our hypothalamus gland because that's the one that perceives, are we safe? Are we calm? And coordinates and communicates signals down to all the other glands. So I made a list here of a few of our favorite glandular supplements and a few nutrients. And then, of course, from seafood, we get iodine. And then I like to recommend pumpkin seeds for zinc and Brazil nuts for selenium. And then, of course, for people with thyroid hormone conversion problems, thyroxane, and then the one from Biotics is called Metastem, that are specifically designed to help that happen naturally. Other things to help our hormones, obviously, it depends on our digestion and our liver detoxification. So we want to be having regular bowel movements. And sometimes, we may need some herbs or concentrated foods to help that happen. We like to recommend doing purification cleanses on a regular basis, definitely every January and sometimes again later in the year. But these very therapeutic vegetables like the cruciferous ones like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and then also beets, garlic, onions, and radishes. All of those give sulfur to help the liver neutralize and detox chemicals and excess hormones from the system. And of course, we want to avoid any kind of personal care products that have these chemicals in them. And I think a lot of people probably need to rethink their morning coffee because it may be tainted with mold. And then, of course, let's not do the coffee mate and other creamers that introduce chemicals and sugar or fake sugar into our coffee. And then if you really want to focus on detoxification, you may like to do castor oil packs, and you might even like to do some colon hydrotherapy or coffee enemas. Quick question, who knows what this picture, this little purple flower is in the bottom right corner of the slide? Any of y'all want to take a guess?
Is that echinacea? No,
No,
no, it's wild yam. Is that wild yam?
no, but that's a good guess. This one is milk thistle.
Oh, milk thistle. Oh, for
Milk,
liver. Yep.
milk thistle for the liver. All right. So we also want to do whatever we can to optimize sleep and energy. So our last Zoom call, we talked a lot in depth about sleep and energy, but basically you want to keep your bedroom quiet, cold, and dark. You want to get 7 or 8 hours every night, and that should be enough to get 5 full 90-minute cycles where you go through all 4 stages of sleep. We want to get exercise outside in the morning light and include both resistance training and also steady state cardio with intervals. And doing your exercises like that should be really good to promote your mitochondrial function. All right, so we also want to follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So basically, we recommend paleo or Whole30 if you don't have any specific conditions going on. If you do have a ton of inflammation, we recommend the autoimmune or AIP diet. But if you're just trying to get basic guidelines down, try to avoid gluten when you're in the United States because of the glyphosate contamination. Also avoid sugar, dairy, and maybe anything else that we can help you put your finger on. Like it could be eggs, it could be nuts. We want to get plenty of protein because that's what your body uses to rebuild your tissues and also to build your hormones and your neurotransmitters. And you want lots of high quality fats, things like butter, olive oil, avocado and avocado oil, coconut oil, because that helps to maintain our cell membranes. So the point of all that is that I want you to consider it's maybe not as important what your hormone levels are when you look at them in the blood work as it is to consider, are your cell membranes toxic? And are your receptors clogged with chemicals? And are your cells not able to pick up the hormones that you're measuring and looking at? Like, let's take a step back and a bigger picture approach. If you've made it to 50 and you haven't done any of this work, your endocrine system just might be a dumpster fire. And do you really think that just adding estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone on top of that is going to give you like the magical health that you're looking for? No, like you have to fix the problem.
How many women are doing that though?
Well, a lot, a lot. All right, so I wanted to mention something that's a little more complex, the estrobolome. This is a collection of gut bacteria that metabolizes and regulates estrogen in the body. It picks up used and neutralized estrogen and then adds an enzyme called beta glucuronidase to it, which helps to recycle the estrogen back up for safe reuse. Now, this process has to be in the sweet spot. You don't want it to be too much because then you get too much estrogen recycling, and you don't want it to be too little because then you may feel flat, like deficiency symptoms. A healthy estrobolome supports balanced estrogen levels, which can influence all of your menopausal symptoms. I mean, anything from stamina to weight to energy, everything about how you feel. So that means you want a decent amount of estradiol, you want some estriol, and not very much estrone, which is more inflammatory. But the imbalances in your gut bacteria can lead to having too much or too little estrogen, That can worsen your hot flashes, um, your weight gain, your mood. And so these bacteria in your estrobolome, they need fiber-rich foods. So where do you get fiber from? That actually comes from the produce section. So fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, salads, raw veggies. It doesn't come from the foods in the middle of the grocery aisles that come in boxes and packages. So all of that stuff is really not good fiber if it's been ultra processed. Your good bacteria may include certain strains. So, like if you're taking a probiotic, you can tell if it's a good brand because, like, it'll say lactobacillus whatever, and then it may have like a little number of a strain right after it. And it may say Bifidobacterium longum or Bifidobacterium bifidum or something. But if it has like a few little numbers right after that, then it's telling you very specifically exactly what strain it is. And the higher quality products usually do that. So, but there are some lactobacillus, some bifidobacterium, and some bacillus strains. Those are the spore-based ones that are the best at helping the estrobolome work and helping your estrogen detox work properly. I have not found one probiotic blend that covers all of the top strains that you get in. And so that's why I like the concept of taking one probiotic blend for a certain period of time and then switching to something else that might be stronger in some other areas. So in that way, you can maintain good gut diversity. And then, of course, you can also just eat some non-dairy fermented foods. Okay. Um, so then here we have my favorite hormonal test of all. This is the Dutch test, and it stands for Dried Urine Test of Comprehensive Hormones. So it did not come from the Netherlands. Um, this test, it shows free values of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, plus their downstream metabolites, so that you can get an understanding what your body is doing with the hormones. They don't just stay in one spot. The 2OH detox pathway, which what I'm referring to is down here in the bottom right corner. If you, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but here in this circle where it says 2.1 in the middle, right below it says 2OHE1. These three things right here, these are your liver detox pathways, and they're represented by this pie chart with the blue, red, and green down in the corner. So the 2OH, this is the healthiest detox pathway. You want the majority of your estrogen going down that line. So this example, this person here has a little over 50% in the green. You really want it to be more like 75% to be as healthy as possible. And then the other two, the blue and the red, are more inflammatory. You do need some of the blue. The blue is the 16OH. You need some of that because um, it is a little stimulatory, it is a little proliferative, but that's a good thing if you have just barely enough of it. Like it's good for your bone density, it's good for your vaginal mucosa, it's good for your cell turnover and the integrity of your skin. And it's also good for healing and repair of your connective tissue. So, um, a lot of this has to do with your genetics. You can influence it by your intake of cruciferous vegetables and also certain antioxidants like resveratrol and lipoic acid. But some people naturally favor, one of these three pathways. So like I said, 2OH is very healthy. You want the majority there. 4OH is inflammatory. And when it's high, that would be the red zone, the little red piece of the pie. It can show that you're under too much oxidative stress, which basically means internal rusting and premature aging, and that can cause DNA damage. So DNA damage, that's something that happens as cancer is progressing. So, when you do this test, this is like the most important thing that I'm looking for. Your actual hormone levels are not the most important thing. I want to make sure that you're not showing signs of going down an unhealthy pathway. Um, this test also tells us about your methylation capacity, which is very important. If your methylation is poor, that can make your homocysteine go high, and that can inflame your blood vessels and lead to, dementia, high blood pressure, stroke, like all kinds of things that you don't want. And then, of course, 16-OH, because it is the most proliferative pathway, it is linked to breast cancer as well. But the 4-OH is equally dangerous, I would say. So this is a rich test. It gives you so much information. There's a measurement of your melatonin, so we get an idea if that would help you sleep if you're suffering there. It measures cortisol 4 or 5 times throughout a 24-hour period, so we really get to see a full picture of your circadian rhythm. And then we also get to see the brain neurotransmitters dopamine and norepinephrine. So that gives us an idea if maybe you might benefit from some L-tyrosine or if you need more vitamin C in your diet. And then there's even a marker for gut dysbiosis, as well as vitamin B12 and B6. So I mean, that was just like a 1 minute synopsis of this test that, I mean, it is pricey, but it tells you so much, not only about your hormonal strength, but some of these things that you can't even look at in your blood work. And it also tells you about the safety of the hormones you're using and whether you're doing enough to promote your liver and detoxification. So just to sum it up, these are the top things that complete the story about supporting your hormones. One, we want to manage our stress. We need to keep our weight in check. We want to support our thyroid hormones and liver detox. We want to keep our head on straight with good focus. And so we need to do everything we can to prioritize sleep and energy. We want to control our cravings. Of course, we've got lots of good sugar handling vitamins here at the office that help cut down on that. And then we need good fiber from the produce section and non-dairy fermented foods to feed our good gut bacteria so that our estrogen recycling works properly. And then, of course, we want to stay on top of testing and monitoring, not just our blood work, but also some of the more functional tests like the Dutch test to make sure our inflammatory pathways don't get maxed out. And then a bonus item that I wanted to mention, because this is a huge topic on social media, is creatine. So everybody's saying that everyone needs to be on creatine and how it's so good for your muscles and it's good for your brain and all of that. And like, that's true. It's a totally safe supplement that a lot of people can really benefit from. But nobody ever talks about the fact that not everyone can tolerate creatine. So if your kidneys are weak, they may not be able to excrete the creatine well. And if you're not excreting it, you're going to retain massive amounts of water and just get puffier and puffier every day. And, also if your body's not dealing with it great, or maybe if you're not drinking enough water, it can make you feel very dehydrated, and that's not comfortable either. So, I mean, these are just some things to keep in mind. Not everybody is built the same. We don't need the same cookie cutter solutions for everyone.
Well, that's so right, Claire. But remember, they're getting a lot of this information from their podcasts and things like that. Those people are selling that creatine, right? So it's good for it's the silver bullet for so many different things, is what they think. But like
Yeah,
you said, the testing is very important to realize maybe you might not be beneficial for you to take. So
yeah,
I
right.
think
So
that's
that's
important.
that's the thing. Um,
Yeah.
it does cost money to do the testing, but it's absolutely worth it because then you get a good idea of how is my body working? What does my body need? You don't want to be taking every single supplement or, hormone or herb or food or whatever that you hear about. I mean, everybody's trying to sell something. You really just want to know what's personalized to me. Where's my weakness?
And
Um,
that's working with somebody though too, Claire. I think that's another thing too. That's a great opportunity for people to work with somebody who's targeted and their goal is to get you moving in a better direction versus like just going on. I mean, golly, how many people walk in our office all the time and that they've been on Instagram or whatever, and they said that buy this product or use this product, and they've been taking it. And like, I don't really feel like it's even working for me, but I'm taking it because they told me to.
Right.
Like working with somebody and understanding that after a month or two of assessments, seeing what's going on, you can still tell if there's a difference. And that's where I think bringing you in or hiring you to help with the understanding of this process without even testing. But I mean, even what most people bring in their blood work, and shoot, we get a lot of information just from that. But even those are deficient in some of the tests that we need. So,
Yeah, well, that's the problem because
yeah.
people come in with their blood work that their medical doctors ran, and they said, I asked my doctor to run a full thyroid panel, but yet I look at it and it still only has TSH and T4. And so doctors don't have the time to educate their clients, and they don't have time to think outside the box or do anything differently than what they've been trained to do that they know that the insurance company is going to cover. So anyway,
Right. And I don't,
that's where we come in.
yeah, and I totally agree. And I don't think it's thinking about even outside the box. I think it's just more along the lines of doing their own legwork and researching a lot of this stuff. And that's what you've done a lot of, Claire, which we're very proud of. So, listen, that has been like, I don't know about Travis and Sam. I mean, she asked for questions. Um, woo, I'm going to sit here and just, in awe. I'm looking forward to hear the questions that Sam and Travis have. But I think you covered everything. And normally we do this in a short little stint. This has been almost an hour, but totally
I have
worth it
not
because there's
covered
so much.
everything. Listen, you
Yeah.
said 1 hour or less. I have
Yeah. No,
not.
no, no, no. Listen. And it's covered a lot of information that obviously it's not everything, but it covered a lot of information that we really like, and you simplified it. And by the way, beautiful slides, by the way. Once again, you guys, great job
Thank
of
you,
putting this.
Travis.
Yeah, great job with this. But no, I don't think, is
Travis
there
did
any
that.
questions, Trav, Dr. Sam, you guys have anything that you want to add or question or?
Nothing that I can think of. Um,
Yeah.
I guess just kind of harping on the Instagram thing. Like, yeah, they're trying to sell something, but they don't know what medications you're on, other
Oh,
stuff you're taking, and all the different side effects. Certain things can interact with each other and do things. So,
and that's another frustrating thing, right? They never really talk about how this medication, and this medication that you're taking, we've never really done a study to see what all three of those do to your physiology when you're on all those products at once, right? Or five products or eight products. When you're using targeted nutrition, you can actually layer and stack other things in there and not really worry about hurting people. So I agree, Travis. There's a lot of that people just don't know, and they're just listening to somebody saying it's worked for me. I'm taller, I'm faster, I'm stronger, and they're like, I would like that. Give me that product, right? So
mhm.
anyway, hey, Sam, you got anything you want to add or?
No
Yeah.
questions for me.
Sam's like, I got menopause. I've like locked it down
Already
right
through it.
Thank
now. So anyway, Claire, thank you for doing this. Like I said, next week or 2 weeks, we're going to go over amino acids and the value of those. Obviously, digestion and things like that is a really important key. But Claire, thank you very much. We can wrap this up. Guys, appreciate your help. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.